Welcome back to the Everyday Saint podcast. I'm Eve Rosemary, back with another episode for you today. And we're going solo again today because the last few days I've really been feeling called to share this message as I've reflected on this last semester of college for me and just my whole college experience in general, but especially as it relates to how I viewed myself during college. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that I struggled with having Hashimoto's disease and some thyroid problems, which caused weight gain my freshman year of college. That was really, really difficult for me to go through. And now, 2.5 years later, I have learned a lot about my body and learned a lot about myself and had a lot of reflections on what it is to reconcile wanting to lose weight with also glorifying our body and recognizing our body as a gift, because those things often do not seem to go hand in hand in at least my mind, and I think that's been a lot of other people's experiences as well, that it's difficult to be in the mentality of wanting to lose weight while also wanting to honor our bodies and see them as gifts from God. So I have a couple tips, kind of some reflections as well on how to grow as Catholics as a way to honor both our bodies and our faith and honor God and be grateful for all of the gifts that He's given us, especially when it comes to wanting to honor our bodies and not just grow spiritually and emotionally and mentally, but also grow physically and what that looks like. So to begin, I think one of the reasons that women in particular struggle with this so much is that women were created to be beautiful. Like the female body is something that's viewed as like glorious and so beautiful because it's life-giving and it's nurturing. And it's meant, like even in our cycles, when our bodies are like ready to have children, it makes us even more beautiful during those phases. And we're just created in this way and in this pattern that we are to attract and to view ourselves as beautiful and have this gift of beauty. It's not a bad thing. And I think Satan really likes to attack us in this. And that's why women in particular struggle so much with our beauty, because it's something that's a gift from God. And Satan doesn't want us to see our bodies as things that are such gifts, as things that create and things that nurture in the way that they do in women in particular, and how we are so receptive and so we have the ability to just attract people and make people feel like they're at home within the soul of a woman, and Satan wants to attack this and take it down. So a lot of times our roots of our insecurities are nothing that we should even be insecure about to begin with, because it's something that Satan likes to distort in the mind and distort in the heart, so that you're less focused on the mission that God has for you and more focused on what we look like and how we feel. I have memories even of my freshman year when all of a sudden my body was changing so much, with not even knowing that I had Hashimoto's disease. But it was during the winter time that I really noticed a lot of my body changing. And this was, when we would wear coats and sweatshirts. And as a result, the things that I wore were more baggy and hid my body because I was feeling so insecure. And I remember walking to class and being like, I don't even want to take my coat off because I don't want people to see me and see what I look like right now. And just thinking about how Satan really distorted my view of myself, because then as a result of me feeling this way, I wasn't as social. I wasn't going out and being as kind and compassionate to other people, because all I was focused about was how I looked and how I felt. And that was like this broken record in my mind of, man, I don't look how I used to. I am not beautiful. I do not feel good about myself. And when you don't feel good about yourself, you can't be there in the way that you need to be there for other people. When in reality, no one's even paying attention to how you look. No one's paying attention to the extra couple pounds that you've gained. No one cares that much, or nearly as much as you do, about your body. And in fact, they're more focused on how you're making them feel, how you're treating them, and not at all focused on what you look like. And that's what I realized is looking around. Some of the most beautiful people that I knew and was getting to know at that point, especially as a freshman in college and meeting all these people, like, I didn't even pay attention to anything about their body or what they looked like because I was focused on this friendship and focused on the quality of their heart and not on anything else physical. I was just focused on getting to know these people, and in the end, what we look like doesn't really matter that much because beauty is fleeting anyways, and God can use that beauty as something that is good and something that is, like, He's given us this beauty as a gift, but it's not the end-all be-all. It is by no means the end-all be-all, and it should not, our insecurity should not take away from the mission that God has given us. And a lot of times when we feel this way, someone that I turned to in these struggles was Our Lady. I had a lot of reflections on Our Lady and realizing that, we see Our Lady and we think to ourselves like, oh, she is so beautiful. Like, Mary, you are someone who is so beautiful and so wonderful. And why do we think that? Like, we don't know what she looks like. In all of the paintings that we see of her, any art that's depicted of her, she is like, full on, I don't even know, like, she's fully clothed, like, there's no part of her body that we can really see. She's always in long sleeves, a very flowing gown. We have absolutely no idea what she looks like, but we still call her beautiful. And that's because beauty is from the quality of character, not the quantity on a scale, not the physical. So when we're focused on, like, God, I want to improve, like, in prayer, we should be so much less focused on what we look like and more focused about the quality of our heart, because that's what He cares about most. He cares about how we're treating our body. Like, none of this I'm saying is in a way like, eat junk food, eat whatever you want. Like, nothing like that. Like, don't work out. It's meant to be in a way that glorifies the body and not degrades the body. And that's where a lot of our mentality gets shifted, is instead of wanting to improve and grow, we instead just degrade and don't glorify through our process of wanting to lose weight or change what we look like or take care of ourselves. And we should first and foremost be focused on how God is calling us to grow in the quality of our character and not be so focused on the physicality of our body. I also thought of Our Lady during her pregnancy with Christ. I know that through pregnancy, your body's changed so much. And I just wondered to myself a lot, like, did Mary feel insecure when she was gaining weight during her pregnancy? Did she feel insecure when she was postpartum and her body looked different than it did before? And the conclusion I came to in my reflection is that there is no way that Mary could have felt insecure in those moments, because when her body was softer and she was nurturing Christ, like, she was nurturing God. She was holding God within her. And so, like, how could you feel insecure when you're someone who is holding Christ within you? And are we not the same? Every time that we receive the Eucharist, we are holders of Christ. We are nurturers of Christ in our body. We spend our whole lives being held by Christ. But for this moment when we receive the Eucharist, we are the beholders of Christ ourselves. So how could we not be grateful for our bodies when we are the ones who are holding Christ within us, that we are intimately creating a home within our bodies for Christ to dwell in? And you can't reconcile, you can't be degrading your body and not treating it as, not to be cheesy, but as a temple of the Holy Spirit, because that's what it then becomes when we receive the Eucharist. We cannot enter into receiving the Eucharist without being grateful for the very fact that our body allows us to receive the Eucharist and that Christ allows us to receive Him in such a way. Something else that has helped me in my mentality is thinking about the habits that I'm creating now are going to be impacting me and generations of my family to come. So many of the sins of our fathers and our mothers and our grandparents are passed down generation through generation. So what sins am I committing now? Because those sins are not just my own, right? Those sins are going to be passed down to my family members someday. Those are going to be passed down to my daughters and to my sons. So what habits am I creating? Because if I am creating sins when it comes to insecurities with my body, or when I'm creating sins that degrade my body, I know that's something that now my children are likely going to have to work through those sins in their own life, however that manifests itself for them. So how am I combating these sins in a way that they are cut off and that they will not impact my family? And thinking, it's helped me a lot to not just be motivated to be grateful for my body and to lose weight in a healthy way, just for myself, my own motivation, but knowing the motivation of, if I am in a pattern of sin, my daughter is likely also going to end up in this pattern of sin in her life. So I need to stop sinning in this way, or I need to not even be near the temptation of not treating my body well, because that's going to impact my daughter. And I don't want to see her go through that or see her struggle with that. And then moving on is, now as we're losing weight, I wanted to go over some tips that have helped me to healthily walk into a season of wanting to lose weight and go about this in a posture of being grateful and glorifying my body, instead of so focused on what the scale says and so focused on every calorie that I'm counting, every macronutrient that I'm consuming. So something that's helped me is that, there's a basic formula, calories in, calories out, when you're trying to lose weight. And that is, in my opinion, I think it is okay to count calories, but you also have to know yourself, right? And if you're someone who's going to start counting calories and all of a sudden you're going to start eating less and less and notice that you're so controlling of everything that you eat because everything needs to be calculated, then you need to readjust how you're wanting to lose weight. And maybe what that looks like instead is getting the substantial macronutrients that you need. So making sure that you're getting in enough healthy fats, enough protein, especially to fuel your body, because that's what this is all for. That's what food is for, is to fuel your body, not to just give us pleasure, but food is meant to fuel you and nurture you. So be conscious of what you're putting in your body. Losing weight doesn't just look like counting calories, but also being aware of what you're putting in your body. Is this something, that's going to make me feel good? That's going to help me go through this day with high energy levels? Is this going to help me accomplish my mission that God has given me today? Or is this going to slow me down? Am I going to feel like I'm in a little bit of a rut after eating this? Am I going to feel guilty if I overindulge in having this food? Because it's important to have things in moderation. Like, we can have treats, we can have those things every once in a while, but ensuring that when we have those treats and when we have those moments where we're allowing a little bit more of those unhealthy foods in, that it's not going to slow us down from the mission that God has given us that day, and that we're still glorifying our bodies. Because I believe that, any form of an eating disorder would be a mortal sin, because that is not glorifying the body that God has given you, and that's a form of self-harm. And so that is through not eating enough or through eating too much as well. So being really aware of the foods that we're eating. And you can also eat healthy and enjoy God's food. Enjoy all the seasonings that you're putting on, all the flavors on your plate, making your plate really colorful, because that's something that's going to honor God, is eating things that are good for us and things that are colorful on our plates that has been grown from the very ground that we live on. Those are gifts from God. Food is a gift from God to nourish us and to sustain us, and not something that's meant to be abused. So then also looking at that, look at the diet or the protocol that you're following. If this is not something that is substantial or sustainable long term, you might need to readjust what you're doing. Because if you're restricting to the point that you get to the weekend or something and you overindulge, well, there's probably something that you need to readjust within your protocol, that doesn't happen, that you continue to glorify your body in all that you do. So maybe that does look like being just more aware of, have I gotten in enough vegetables today? Have I gotten enough protein today? Things like that, shifting your mentality from restricting to glorifying, I think is really important in knowing that, again, if what you're doing is not sustainable for the long term, then you're probably not glorifying your body in the way that you need to. And then just knowing yourself. What are your tendencies? And have you asked God what He's asking you to do? Because sometimes we can get so caught up in the physical, like this is all my own doing. How can I bring God into this? That we forget to actually ask Him what He's wanting of us in this season of our life. Is He wanting you to try new workouts? Is He wanting you to glorify Him in how you're working out, why you're working out, what you're doing to eat healthy, the foods that you're implementing now into your diet that you weren't before, or the foods that you're taking out? Have you asked Him what He wants you to do? I would really bring that to prayer, because if you don't lead in your view of self with God first, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Because God is calling you to something, and He may be calling you to lose a couple pounds. Maybe He is calling you to eat a little bit healthier. And that's not a bad thing, but He also might be calling you to realize something different about yourself. I know for me with Hashimoto's disease, it was really difficult for me to even lose weight for a long time, and I got so down on myself. And then I had to realize that God was actually teaching me a lot about my body, about certain foods that helped me and certain foods that harmed me. And even in this season where I was trying to lose weight and wasn't, I was still learning so much about myself, and that was not wasted time. And I think that's really important. If I would have prayed about it more first before just jumping in and doing any diet I heard of on a podcast, or doing anything that I read or saw on Instagram Reels that would help me, or trying any recipe, I think that would have helped me so much in this 2-year-long journey if I first would have gone to God and said, Lord, how can I switch my mentality to honor you? What phrases can I say that are going to help me learn how to love you more through this? And one thing I realized was viewing self-discipline versus unhealthy eating habits. Because as Catholics, we believe fasting is a really important part of our lives. But we have fasting and we have feasting. And fasting can be a really great form of self-discipline, which we need self-discipline. We need self-discipline to stay strong in our faith. We need self-discipline to learn how to honor God, to stay away from sin and temptation. And actually learning how to take care of your body can be a really great way to learn self-discipline if we view it in the right way. Versus viewing it as, I need to do this to lose weight. We can view losing weight as, I am doing this because I want to honor my body, and I'm learning self-discipline through it, because if I can be disciplined in the small things, I will be disciplined in the big things. And in self-discipline, it should not be something that consumes our every thought. It should be something that comes a little bit more naturally, but still with the level of commitment that we can offer these things up for God and know that God is pleased in our self-discipline. I think that's the biggest key, is God pleased in how I'm treating my body? Ask yourself that question. Because if the answer is no, then you need to readjust. And that doesn't mean that you can't still strive to honor your body and to lose weight, but it just might look a little bit different for you. Because our first priority should always be to honor God. And our first priority should always be to view the gifts that God has given us as gifts, and that includes our body. So yes, always lead with the mentality of, am I prioritizing God in this? Am I prioritizing my faith in this? And am I honoring my body? And when in doubt, I always go back to the sacrifice of the Mass. Because I remember so many times where I would be sitting and just weeping in Mass. Especially my freshman year of college, just seeing how much my body had changed. That was all that I thought about all that year, it felt like. And I would go and I went to daily Mass because I needed it at that point. I mean, you always need it, but especially at this point in my life, I really needed that consistency of going to Mass and hearing the priest say, "This is my body given up for you." Because when my body felt like it wasn't enough, I would hear those words and be reminded that when my body wasn't enough, God was, and Christ was. And that if I can see the sacrifice that Jesus gave in his body, I can offer him back my body too. And I can say back to Christ, "This is my body given up for you." Like, I do not feel good about myself right now, but this is my body given up for you. That's a phrase that I've used a lot in this journey when I've felt a little bit out of control or felt really insecure about myself, knowing that, like, this is my body that I can give back to Christ because he created it in the first place. Like, it's not even mine to begin with. And I can give it back to God because he's going to take care of it. And if he was able to give his body for us, I can do the same. And I can give him my body because when I don't know how to take care of it, he knows how to take care of it. And then also just thinking about how Jesus would have felt on the cross, looking at his mutilated body and knowing how he probably felt about himself in that moment. Because if he could go through that, which is so much worse. I mean, he had a resurrected body then too. He went from a body that was manipulated and not treated well to a glorified body. And he can do the same in our hearts. He can take what is broken and torn and degraded and turn it into something that's so beautiful because he sees the beauty that's within us and he sees the beauty of what we are when we don't see it. And we can always go back to that and always rely on that and be grateful for it. So that wraps up this episode. I hope you got some good reflection out of it because I know where you're at. If you picked up this podcast and started listening, I get it, girl. And I just know how difficult it can be. And I would love it if you need extra prayers, especially when it comes to this topic or need any extra advice or to talk to somebody. Please feel free to reach out to me. My Instagram is @theeveryday.saint. Or you can email me too at eve.theeverydaysaint@gmail.com. Just because I know this is a really sensitive topic and something that a lot of women struggle with that I didn't even realize until I started struggling with it on my own, that this is something that everyone pretty much goes through. So I'm praying for you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for listening, and God bless you.